Good morning, fellow veterans, elected officials, clergy members, and residents of Medford. Welcome to the City of Medford's annual Memorial Day ceremony. My name is Sergeant Charlie Hartnett of the Medford Police Department. I was privileged and honored to serve as a military police officer with the 972nd Military Police Company of the United States Army in Operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. I'm also honored and privileged to serve as Master of Ceremonies for today's annual Memorial Day ceremony here at Oak Grove Cemetery. I'd like to thank Mayor Burke and everyone here today for this distinct honor. And as a veteran, I would like to thank all of you here in attendance today for honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country, lest we not forget that freedom is paid for by those men and women willing to give their lives for it. To begin today's ceremony, we are honored to have with us here the Medford Police Department Honor Guard securing the colors. Honor Guard, would you please post the colors? Thank you. And now, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance will be the Medford Girl Scouts. And the Boy Scouts. Let's give them a round of applause, everybody. Great job, guys. Now, I'd ask those of you who can to please rise as we listen to the Medford High School Chorus under the direction of Mr. Andrew Ray perform our national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you very much for that. For today's invocation, I'd like to invite Reverend Matthew Rozier of the First Baptist Church of Medford. Reverend?
Let us pray. God of ages, in your sight nations rise and fall and pass through times of peril. Now, when our hearts and land are troubled, be near to save. May leaders be led by your wisdom. May they search your will and see it clearly. If we have turned from your way, let us reverse our path. Give us your light and your truth to guide us. Righteous God, you rule the nations. Guard brave women and men who risk themselves in battle for their country. Give them compassion for enemies. Keep our sons and daughters from hate that hardens or from scorekeeping with human lives. Though they must be at war, let them live for peace, as eager for agreement as for victory. Encourage them as they encourage one another, and never let hard duty separate them from loyalty to your name and your image in one another. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. And now welcome the Honorable Stephanie M. Burke, Mayor of the City of Medford, up to the podium to share a few words. Mayor?
Good morning, everyone. Family, friends, Medford residents, and especially the Medford veterans that are here today to share in the ceremony. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce the elected officials that are present here today. We have House Leader, Representative Paul Donato, State Representative Christine Barber, City Council President Rick Carviello, Vice President Della Russo, Councilor Knight, Falco, and Marks. Also from our school committee, we have Mr. Paul Russo, Ms. Stone, Ms. Vanderkloot, and Ms. Kratz. I'd also just like to take note that we're missing someone who has been a part of our ceremonies for so many years, Mr. John Granaro. He fought during the Vietnam-era war, and for 25 years orchestrated the flags that you see in front of us. So I hope that your thoughts and prayers go out to him as he recuperates, and he is certainly missed. And thank you, Sergeant Hotnet, for stepping into his shoes. We really appreciate it. As we just listened to the lyrics of the Star-Spangled Banner, it, quote, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Medford is the home of the brave. From the earliest days of the American Revolution to this very day, Medford's men and women have enthusiastically said yes to serve our country. In April 1775, 59 Medford Minutemen were at Lexington and Concord. Medford sons and daughters have continually answered our country's call to arms and stood shoulder to shoulder with Americans from every town and city across our land to defeat tyranny and defend liberty. On Memorial Day, it is right that we bow our heads and solemnly acknowledge all those who began by saying yes to service to our country and ended by giving their lives so that we can enjoy our many liberties and freedoms. Our freedoms are many. In his State of the Union address in 1941, President Franklin Roosevelt said that freedom, at its core, consists of 4 freedoms: the freedom of speech, the freedom of worship, the freedom from want, and the freedom from fear. Following President Roosevelt's example, I suggest that if we truly want to acknowledge and remember ultimate sacrifice made by so many, then we should do so by exercising and utilizing the very freedoms that they have and continue to provide us. So let us acknowledge the ultimate sacrifice of those who have served by exercising fully freedom of speech. Let us never be silent and ignore the truth that America is stronger when the marketplace of ideas, politics, and art are stirred by the expressions and viewpoints of every person. And let us acknowledge the ultimate sacrifice of those who have served by exercising fully the freedom from fear. Those who died gave their lives because we are a people united. So especially in this age of electronic devices, let us resist the growing isolation and distance from our neighbors and embrace a sense of community and understanding that will overcome all fear. And let us acknowledge the ultimate sacrifice of those who serve by exercising fully freedom from want. Those who have died gave their lives so that we can go on with our lives. As we do so, let us work together to provide for those amongst us who have less and are in need of our assistance. And finally, let us acknowledge the ultimate sacrifice of those who have served by exercising fully freedom to worship, that every person be free to worship God as they choose in their own traditions. These are the basic freedoms purchased at great cost by the lives of those who served. As I walk through this lawn this morning, I see so many veterans here with us. You have served our country with distinction, and those of us who are not veterans have lives that are better because of you, freedoms that are greater because of you. Would all of the veterans in the audience this morning please raise your hands so that we can acknowledge you? May God continue to bless you, our great city, and bless America, the United States of America, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Burke. To give the address for today's Memorial Day ceremony is our city solicitor, Mr. Mark Rumling.
Good morning. Before I begin my remarks, I want to take the opportunity to thank Mayor Burke for this opportunity to speak with you today. Back in January, I told her that this May, this year, is the 50th anniversary of my brother's death from wounds he received in Vietnam. My brother is Captain Robert Patrick Rumley Jr., and he's buried in the Vietnam lawn. And she said yes very quickly, and I appreciate that. But more so, like the mayor, I want to thank all the veterans here. I am not a veteran. I did not serve, but you did. And like all of us who are here today, we are in your debt. And I am honored to speak before you this morning. So, we begin. Memorial Day, once called Decoration Day. In 1868, during the first Decoration Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery, a congressman from Ohio, James A. Garfield, gave the remarks. Now, you may recognize that name, of course, because a few years later, that congressman would be elected the 20th President of the United States. But then Congressman Garfield began that day with these words. He said, "I feel overcome with a sense of how useless it is to say or to utter any words on this occasion. If silence is ever golden, it certainly must be here, besides the graves of these thousands of men whose lives were eternally more significant than any speech, and whose death has stolen their futures, like music that will never be played, or a song that will never be sung." Well, I understand Garfield's comments. Certainly a respectful silence is the most appropriate response of a grateful nation to those who gave their lives. But neither Garfield then or us today can remain silent in response to so great a sacrifice. So how do we acknowledge them? How do we show the respect that is worthy of the price that they paid? President Lincoln gave us a guide in his immortal Gettysburg Address that will be recited for us later in the program by Narda Alvarez of Medford High School. In that timeless speech, Lincoln said, "From these honored dead, we must take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion." So we ask ourselves, who are these honored dead? And for what cause must we take increased devotion? Now, their names are many, tales of valor and bravery by many heroes whose names we know through the history books. But mostly, they're people whose names we don't know and whose names do not grace the annals of history. But they were Americans, and they came from every city, and they came from every town, every street, large or small, from all across the country. They came from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They came from Asbury Park, New Jersey. And they came from Medford, Massachusetts. And what each one of them had in common, what each one of them could share, is that they said yes to the call to serve, knowing that within that yes, the ultimate sacrifice was possible. And they said yes nonetheless. And so they entered. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and they served. And they died. And we must never forget them. We must never forget that on the evening of June 2nd, 1966, a young Marine corporal, 22 years of age, was on patrol just northeast of the Hai Phan Bridge near Quang Nam in the Republic of Vietnam. And that night, he sustained fatal wounds to his chest, his arms, and his legs from an explosive device. That young Marine came from Arlington Street in Medford and is buried just a few feet from where we stand in the Vietnam lawn here at the Oak Grove Cemetery. I speak, of course, of Corporal Harold Barnett Nelson, better known as Pee Wee Nelson. His memorial marks the rotary at High Street before the bridge to Arlington. He was the first of more than a dozen people from Medford who gave their life during the Vietnam War. And we today enjoy the many freedoms that he protected. And we must never forget the sacrifices made by the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, better known as the Walking Dead. Now, the term Walking Dead was originally used, ironically, by Ho Chi Minh, chairman of the communist regime in North Vietnam, and he used this term in reference to American Marines who were fighting in the A Shau Valley. Later, after suffering extraordinarily high casualty rates, the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, the 1-9, used that term to describe themselves, and they had every right to do so. Of a standard battalion strength of 800 Marines, the 1st Battalion had 747 killed in action. On March 4th, 1967, the 1-9 once again engaged in what has been described as a horrific battle with enemy forces near Quan Tri. A young Marine corporal, Louis Edward Perry of Asbury Park, New Jersey, was fatally hit by hostile fire. And as the life left his body that day, he was held in the arms of his closest friend. A young Marine from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Ernest Lindsay, who was Medford's Director of Veterans Affairs. We enjoy the many freedoms they protected. And in doing so, we must act in a fashion appropriate for so great a sacrifice. And of these freedoms, of these many freedoms, this morning I will mention only one: the freedom of speech. And how easy it is to say that our honored dead gave their lives to protect the gift of freedom of speech. But it takes more than empty anthems on holidays to truly honor the gift of freedom of speech. We have to live it and live it well. The legendary judge and legal philosopher Learned Hand said that one of the most important things in life is to have a healthy inner doubt as to whether what we think is correct is actually correct. And the judge's point was that if we think that our personal viewpoints are the only correct position to take, then we can't possibly engage in civil conversation or dialogue with one another. And yet, this inflexibility, this resistance to listen, seems to be growing every year in our country. If a person does not agree with the positions taken by the extreme left, it's likely they'll be called a hater or a fool. And if a person does not agree with the positions taken by those on the extreme right, then it's likely they'll be called un-American or their loyalties questioned. My sisters and brothers, our honored dead did not give their lives so that our political discourse would sound more like a barroom argument than the sharing of political positions and ideas. Freedom of speech requires a civic maturity characterized by intentional listening so that differing positions are taken into real consideration instead of being summarily cast aside as being unimportant or unworthy. The ultimate price paid by those whom we remember today requires nothing less. So in closing, I will invoke a right that I have as an American, a right guaranteed by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, and it states at the beginning, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, or, and many people forget this, or prohibiting the free exercise of religion. This freedom to worship was protected by those who gave their lives in the service to our country, and it too must be exercised. And so I do. And I do with a sense of gratitude and thanks. And I say, Almighty God, hold those who have protected us with their lives. Hold those who have gone before us to allow us to go ahead. Hold them in your hand. Hold them in your peace. Hold them eternally, author of life. And help us to be worthy of the great gift of freedom that they preserved. And please, be with those women and men who serve our country today. Return them to the love and safety of their families. And dear Lord, bless the people of our home, the city of Medford, and God bless America.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. And now, performing the Battle Hymn of the Republic, once again, Medford High School Chorus.
Glory shall be his footstool, and the soul of wrong his wing. Our God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Our God is marching on.
Thank you, everyone. Great job. Memorial Day was started and introduced by General John A. Logan in 1868. Here is order. General Order Number 11. Headquarters, Grand Army of the Republic, Washington, D.C., May 5th, 1868. Bullet 1. The 30th day of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land. In this observance, no form or ceremony is prescribed, but posts and comrades will in their own way arrange such fitting services and testimonials of respect as circumstances may permit. We are organized, comrades, as our regulations tell us, for the purpose, among other things, of preserving and strengthening those kind and fraternal feelings which have bound together the soldiers, sailors, and Marines who united to suppress the late rebellion. What can aid more to assure this result than by cherishing tenderly the memory of our heroic dead, who made their breasts a barricade between our country and its foes. Their soldier lives were the reveille of freedom to a race in chains, and their death a tattoo of rebellious tyranny in arms. We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance. All that the consecrated wealth and taste of the nation can add to their adornment and security is but a fitting tribute to the memory of her slain defenders. Let no wanton foot tread rudely on such hallowed grounds. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no vandalism of avarice or neglect, no ravages of time, testify to the present or to the coming generations that we have forgotten as a people the cost of free and an undivided republic. If other eyes grow dull and other hands slack, and other hearts cold in the solemn trust, I shall keep it well as long as the light and warmth of life remain in us. Let us then, at the time appointed, gather around their sacred remains and garland the passionless mounds above them with the choicest flowers of springtime. Let us raise above them the dear old flag they saved from dishonor. Let us in this solemn presence renew our pledges to aid and assist those whom they have left among us as sacred charges upon the nation's gratitude, the soldiers and sailors, widow and orphan. It is the purpose of the Commander-in-Chief to inaugurate this observance with the hope it will be kept from year to year, while a survivor of the war remains to honor the memory of his departed comrades. He earnestly desires the public press to call attention to this order and lend its friendly aid in bringing it to the notice of his comrades in all parts of the country in time for simultaneous compliance therewith. Department commanders will use every effort to make this order effective. By command of John A. Logan, Commander-in-Chief. Next up will be the Armed Forces Medley, performed by the Medford High School Band under the direction of Haley Redler. For some remarks on Memorial Day, I'd like to invite Mr. Richie Caviello, Chairman of the Council Veterans Committee of the Medford City Council. Council?
Thank you. Good morning. It's an honor to be here today with you as we come together to remember and honor the service and the sacrifice of our nation's finest and bravest. I've never worn the uniform, been to war, or been wounded in battle. I've never left my family for months or even years to travel across the world to fight for and defend our country. I've never carried a military weapon, backpack, or put on combat boots, shot an enemy, or held a dying friend. I have no idea what war is like. I have no idea what any of you have experienced. The fear, the bravery, the suffering. I know nothing of what you know. And so, as I stand here today, as a grateful American, as an elected official, I am fortunate to have the opportunity to address you in all today and represent the grateful Americans who don't have the honor of speaking to their heroes on Memorial Day, and to wish they could reach out and thank each and every one of you for my part. Today is the day we as a country come together to honor and remember our servicemen and women who answered America's call to service and made the ultimate sacrifice. Memorial Day gives us all the chance to bow our heads to honor our fallen heroes and remember their devotion and respect their dedication. It serves as a time for Americans to stand up and say, thank you. We remember you. And you are truly grateful for your service and sacrifice. It is the responsibility of a grateful nation to look back. It is incumbent of us to also look forward. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. In closing, I want to leave you with a quote from President Harry S. Truman. Our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. Thank you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Council. Unity of our servicemen and women is strong and can be found in the local posts of our veteran associations. For remarks, I'd like to first introduce the commander of Medford's American Legion Post 45, Commander Richard Martin.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, elected officials, invited guests, and all of you people gathered this Memorial Day ceremony. In keeping with the tradition of General Logan's order of making the 30th of May the day to honor our veterans, we continue to this present time. Just this past week, we at the American Legion placed over 8,300 flags on graves at this cemetery of veterans who served this country in war times and in peace times, and to help continue to protect their rights and freedom. Among those were 3 Congressional Medal of Honor veterans. The one thing that became clear as I placed the flags was the fact that the surnames of the veterans were of all nationalities, men and women of all beliefs. They respected them one and all for their sacrifices. They made some came home not as they left, whether it be mental or physical, and some made the ultimate sacrifice and with their lives. Outside of the military cemeteries overseas and cemeteries in the United States, I don't think that you'll find this kind of diversity in any cemetery in the world. It is this kind of diversity that makes up the fabric of our nation. In our past and present wars, you will find there were soldiers, airmen, and sailors who were not American citizens, but were willing to fight for our country and maybe even be killed just for the chance to become an American citizen. Most of our forefathers who were killed in the Revolutionary War were not Americans. They were fighting for the right to be free for themselves and their families. As is the case today, we have many brave military men and women fighting overseas, knowing that they may not come back alive to help protect us and their families from terrorism and defending the rights of this country. And if you can, every day, take time to thank them in your own way. And today, if you have the time, after this ceremony, walk around and stop at a few of the veterans' graves, say a prayer to say thank you for helping to protecting our rights and freedom. Yes, today is Memorial Day, a day to reflect and remember. Thank you. God bless America.
Thank you, Commander. And now, representing the Medford Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 1012 is Commander Steve Hansen.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, friends, family. I'd like to thank Mayor Burke and invite officials there for holding this ceremony. One among our holidays alone bears the name and specific call to remembrance, Memorial Day. If the 4th of July renews the memory of the birth of the nation, Memorial Day renews the memory of those who gave their lives that the nation must live. Memorial Day, originally known as Decoration Day, began shortly after the Civil War. General John A. Logan, a leader of the Northern Veterans, called for a nationwide remembrance, and May 30th, 1868 was designated for the purpose of strewing of flowers, or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country. James Garfield, a politician and former Union general, spoke on the first Decoration Day at Arlington National Cemetery. Almost 150 years later, his message about the cost of our liberty, the sanctity of our institutions, and the importance of national unity seems intended for our divisive times. Garfield was not only a war hero and a statesman, but a minister, college president, and professor who had taught Greek, Latin, and literature. His oratorical skills have long been forgotten, but his words commemorate the fallen should not be lost. To foster a spirit of national unity, we would all do well to remember Garfield's thoughts on the abiding value of America's heroes. A quote from General Garfield: "I love to believe that no heroic sacrifice is ever lost, that the characters of men are molded and inspired by what their fathers have done, that treasured up in American souls are all the unconscious influences of their great deeds." Following his speech, 5,000 people decorated the graves of 20,000 Union and Confederate soldiers buried at Arlington. And at that time, Garfield was a congressman from Ohio. He would eventually become the 20th president and be assassinated only 6 months after his election in 1881. Decoration Day gradually became known as Memorial Day. With the advent of World War I, it was changed to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars. It became a federal holiday in 1971. This year, let's view Memorial Day not simply as an opportunity for a long weekend, but as an occasion for a reflection on the costliness of liberty. Let's remember the fallen and what was said at the first Decoration Day. As Garfield urged, let us consider the silent assembly of the dead. Their voices will forever fill land like holy benedictions. Here, let them rest asleep on the nation's heart, entombed in the nation's love. But while they sleep in our nation's love, let us remain awake, for eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless America. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Commander. Now, for a rendition of America the Beautiful, is Stacy Clayton, a member of the Cemetery Board of Trustees.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriots' dreams that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, Stacy. That was beautiful. Now to deliver the Gettysburg Address is Nada Alvarez, a student at Medford High School.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives, that the nation may live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, not long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last measure of devotion, and that we here resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Abraham Lincoln, November 19, 1863. Thank you.
Thank you, Nada. Great job. As General Logan stated back in 1868, today is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country. To decorate graves today, the City of Medford's Veterans Affairs Director, Ernest Lindsay, will be escorted by Chief Preston Endert of the United States Coast Guard, as the Medford High School Band will perform Hymn of the Fallen. For today's benediction, please welcome Pastor Paul Coughlin of St. Raphael's Church.
We bow our heads and we pray for God's blessing. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for the many blessings you have given us on this Memorial Day. We came to honor all the men and women, uniform who have given their lives in service to our nation. Hold all these brave souls in the palm of your hand. Give comfort and consolation to their families. Remember also for our veterans and for those who continue serving to keep America free, especially those who may be in harm's way this day. And finally, for our dead, we honor their selfless service, acknowledge a debt beyond our price to repay. May these heroes know God's unconditional love and experience everlasting peace. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Performing God Bless the USA, followed by taps, please welcome once again the Medford High School Band. That will conclude today's Memorial Day ceremony here at Oak Grove Cemetery. I'd like to thank all of you for coming and invite you to join us in our march to Honor Roll Park, led by the Medford Police Honor Guard. Have a great day, and God bless America.